Amber?
Thank you everyone so much for having me here. This is something that I'm super passionate about, is women and mental health and veterans, and just kind of giving people more of an understanding. So I'm talking today about mental health in women, and specifically what do we struggle with. So my name is Amber Viola. I am a Navy veteran. I did 8 years in the Navy. I grew up here in NEPA, went to North Pocono, went to the U for a year, then left, went to the Navy, came back, went to Marywood. While I was in the Navy, I became a Department of Defense sexual assault victim advocate. And that's when I kind of first really got my foray into social work, and I was trained by social workers, and I loved them so much. And I knew that once I got out the Navy, I wanted to help my community. I didn't know how. I didn't know kind of like if that was a job or, or what I would kind of do. So after I left the Navy, I went and I finished my bachelor's and master's at Marywood, and kind of figured out what I wanted to do as far as community advocacy, veterans advocacy, and things like that. I'm a PTSD sufferer, and the reason I say sufferer is because I'm still new at this whole PTSD thing, and in kind of my journey of seeking mental health treatment, being a woman, being a Black woman, being here, it has been a disaster. So that is kind of the standpoint that I'm coming from. Due to that, I wrote a book called 72 Hours of Hell, My Time in a VA, which is a collection of short stories about me dealing with my mental health and my path to seeking treatment. And it's not long, and it just goes through a lot of barriers that I think people don't really realize when you're seeking treatment, and also like how you're treated when you're on the other end of seeking treatment. I went as a social worker with a master's degree, and I was treated like dog crap and lied to and by another social worker, and I knew that as a social worker, but the reason I really wanted to write my book and start talking about this, because I knew that other people probably didn't know that, and didn't know how to advocate for themselves, and didn't know really what to do. So there are things that specifically target, I guess should say, women or affect women in a certain way. So 1 in 5 experience a common mental health disorder compared to 1 in 8 men. It's not that we are somehow crazier than men, but we suffer from different things, and also we present our symptoms completely different. 53% of women who have had mental health problems have also experienced abuse. Those things kind of go hand in hand, and then when you add on poverty to that, it makes it even worse, because a lot of women who are in poverty have experienced abuse. And so poverty can lead to mental health issues, abuse can lead to mental health issues, and then if you're a minority, you're gonna face additional inequalities and challenges to seeking mental health and kind of the way that you're being treated. Race also can cause mental health issues. Dealing with racism every single day can be detrimental for your health. I did not know that. Then I kind of knew that in theory in my head, and then I had a job that I worked for that I will not name, that I experienced the worst racism I've ever experienced in my entire life, to the point where I was getting threats to my office phone downtown, and calling me the N-word, calling me all kinds of different things, and that just destroyed my mental health, with having to come into work every single day, and you're already trying to be the best that you can be. Most of us are trying to be good at our job, and then when you have that added pressure of being a woman, looking young, and then on top of that being a Black woman, it was wild. And I ended up leaving that job and returning to school, and I would have loved to stay there, but I just saw how much I was getting beaten down by that. So most common things for women are depression, were twice as likely to suffer from depression than men, and PTSD, which I didn't know until I was diagnosed with PTSD, that it was so prevalent among women. And the reason I didn't know that is because we're not diagnosed as much as men, because we present our symptoms completely different than they do. So we're hypervigilant, and that can be a helicopter mom, that can be have threads of like OCD in there with, you checking things again because you're so aware of your surroundings. For me, it's sitting somewhere so that I can see the exit, and then having slight panic because there's a door open behind me, then realizing that it's a storage room and nobody can get in there and kill me. Sounds ridiculous, but those are the things that are kind of going through your head. Depression and PTSD can go hand in hand, but the trouble feeling emotions really is something that stuck with me, especially when you're dealing with clients who are Black and clients of color. You'll hear a lot of things about, Black women being strong and being resilient and all those things, but all those things are also trouble feeling emotion, because you will cut yourself off from your feelings in order to keep pressing forward and to keep moving. When one of the first times I went to go seek mental health help, I had this great therapist. It was for postpartum depression after I had my daughter, and fast forward after we did the initial intake, she had asked me something and I answered the question, and she was like, wait, but you said no to that in the intake question. I said, well, that's not the same question. And she realized that her questions that she was asking me weren't relevant to me. And so she had screened me, and I wasn't popping up on the things that she was screening for, because they were made culturally for, a white person. Most of the time, men still are kind of the standard of what like our brains are measured against, sadly. And so she realized she kind of had to go back, and she redid my intake and worded the questions differently and kept asking them differently to see where I actually was. And that was her first time really realizing that, wow, you really are having a hard time, but I wouldn't have known that. And so that's just something to kind of think about. Anxiety, women are twice as likely as men to experience generalized anxiety disorder or a panic disorder, and they can present themselves in two separate ways. And anxiety can often present itself as agitation, or somebody being short with you, or someone having an attitude. And often people will have clients who are difficult to work with, and they'll say, oh, well, they don't have any mental health issues. Are you sure? Because that agitation, that bad attitude, that lack of willingness to feel like they're not helping themselves could be their anxiety coming forward. And nobody took the time to really properly screen them and make sure that they really don't have a mental health issue, and they're not just some like angry Black client that you have. Suicide, women attempt suicide more than men, but men are more accurate at it because they use firearms. The exception is female veterans, because we also use firearms. So that sect of women population is a little bit different, because veterans are way more accurate at killing ourselves than everyone else is. And for women, a lot of times you have that thought process of, I don't want to be ugly, so I don't really want to blow my head off, or I don't want my kids to find me. And those are types of different things that you'll kind of see. Eating disorders definitely present different in women of color and in Black women, because overall our body structures are completely different. So you can have a client who is anorexic or bulimic and still be thick and still be overweight, and they can still have an eating disorder, even though they don't necessarily look like your standard anorexic, female. And so culturally, those things are going to be different. When I was in the military, I realized there was a correlation between people who were assaulted, sexually assaulted, and victimized, and eating disorders. Because a lot of the times the women would then mentally want to make themselves unattractive. So a lot of times they would gain weight, and so they wouldn't necessarily get kicked out of the military over their assault, but they would eventually get kicked out because they gained weight and they couldn't stay in standards and regulations. And there was often no help for them. And when I talked to a lot of these women that I served with from different things, I found that out on the back end. And it was like, oh, why didn't you tell anybody? And this is, could we have done something about this? What could we have done? But again, a lot of times people are presenting things in a different way that people aren't really seeing. And when you're in an area like this up here, where a lot of your clients might be women of color, Black women, people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, it's really important to culturally see it from a lens that they're in and not the lens that we're in. And even in the instance of people being from the same area here, we're all from the same area, but we might do things differently or go about things differently. I was watching TikTok, because I love TikTok, and there was a white doctor who was on there who asked the question, why do his Black patients always talk on the phone when they're in there or be on FaceTime? And I knew the answer to that question, because we don't trust y'all, because of the history of racial injustice in the medical field. So in my head, that makes perfectly good sense. Of course, I go and my mom can't go. I'm probably gonna be on the phone with my mom. Back in the day, it was my grandmother. There's times my mom will have me on the phone, because if you're really not feeling well, maybe you're not listening, maybe you're in pain, maybe you're forgetting, maybe your doctor is not very friendly, maybe they are having a bias towards you for any reason. But when he asked that question, I knew what the answer was. The Black people in the comment section knew what the answer was. The white people, it got very racist very fast. They're ghetto, they're ratchet, they're so disrespectful, that's so ignorant, that's so rude. I culturally didn't think it was rude at all, and I actually had to take a step back and be like, is this rude? Is that rude to do? And no, it's not, but we're gonna see it from two different angles. So even though we're all from NEPA, even though we may have all grown up here, you may not be on the phone when you go to the doctor's office, but I will. And so that's a difference, and that doesn't make one thing rude or one thing not rude, but I think you have to, in your head, culturally see, okay, maybe why are they doing this? Because that's gonna change kind of the way that you're interacting with them. Because people said they don't trust you as their doctor, they don't feel safe, and they wanna make sure that they have somebody else hearing that information and things like that, that it's not rude. And it just broke my heart how racist it got so fast, because people really just drew the line and was like, there was no cultural competency, there was no understanding with it. So some of the barriers to help, lack of insurance and cost. Obviously we know that that is a really, really big thing. I hear a lot now, well, there's online mental health services that people can get that are free or low cost. Well, you have to then think about, do people have access to this? Do they have Wi-Fi? Do they have a computer? Do they have a smartphone? I do therapy every week on my phone with Christian, and we video chat, and that's what works best for me. I work from home. I'm able to do that. I don't have to drive all the way to Wilkes-Barre to the VA to do it, but not everybody has access to do that. When I worked at CIC, I remember trying to help people apply for jobs and realizing that I was starting from up here and I need to start from down here. I need to start with, okay, do you have an email address? Okay, do you have, because a lot of times we couldn't even go far without that, without you having an email so that you could apply to a job online, for you to be able to get services. And if you don't have an Apple or a good Android phone, you're not gonna be able to do all that stuff online. So that's gonna be a barrier when everyone's intake is now online. That's really great and helpful for me, but is that really helpful and convenient for everybody? Or is that gonna be another barrier? Because the person's gonna be like, oh, well, I can't do that. I had a doctor tell me, oh, just print off your paper. I was like, who has a printer? That's a millennial. Like, I don't have a printer. Can I print it off there? The second barrier is a lack of awareness. So a lot of things we think are common sense just really aren't common sense. They're common sense to us because of the fields we're in, because of the level of knowledge that we have, the people that we're interacting with, but people don't always know about mental health issues or know what it was. You know, I grew up in, oh, that person is touched. You know, we all knew that they were special. Nobody knew what it was. They weren't diagnosed. We didn't know what the name of it was, but you knew that there was something. And so everybody doesn't have that same level of knowledge, even to know what anxiety means or what even depression really is. Because if you're telling somebody, okay, are you depressed and are you not able to get up and get out of bed? Well, this person is a single parent and has no choice but to get up and get out of bed and go to work every single day. That's not going to be one of their symptoms because they don't have that option. So if you're telling somebody, hey, are you exhausted? Are you tired? And they might say no, they are, but they're always exhausted and tired. So that might not be a great, way to gauge kind of what they're going through. Treatment options. People don't always know what's available to them and know that there's different types of services available. Stigma is also a really, really big one. And for me, even to publicly speak about my mental health and to talk about it openly and publicly, it takes a lot. And it takes being vulnerable, and it takes willingness to put yourself out there and get criticism back. And a lot of jobs that people have, you can't be crazy. If you're a police officer, if you're a firefighter, those are EMTs, those are jobs that a lot of vets get after you get out. And you still can't get the mental health treatment that you want because you're gonna lose your job. And that's the way it is. And it sucks, but that's the truth right now, and we definitely need to be able to change it. Another barrier is lack of time. And what I mean by lack of time is just in the general sense of people just do not always have time. When I was seeing my first therapist for postpartum, I went to her from 8 to 9, and I started work at 9 o'clock, and I had to leave 10 minutes early because I had to be at work. She thought I had attitude and I wasn't taking this seriously because I always was trying to dip out early. What she didn't know was that I worked an hour away, was that my daughter was 2 hours away, and that I worked 24-hour shifts. And that my job didn't care if I had a doctor, but they didn't care if my back was broken. I had to be there at 9 o'clock. So there was no other way for me really to do it. And for me, that was a sacrifice, but she didn't realize that because she didn't ask the right questions. And I didn't give up any information. I didn't tell her that I worked 24-hour shifts. I didn't tell her that I lived an hour away. She assumed that I lived right there and was close and everything, but I didn't really think to give that information because that's the situation that I was already in. So that was my lack of time. Childcare is so important, and people do not always have childcare, and a barrier for people not wanting to seek help or seek treatment could be childcare. And it's not a cop-out, and it's not an excuse. When my baby was little, when we first moved up here, she went to therapy with me. She was in a stroller, she would nurse, she would sleep. As she got older, I wasn't able to go to therapy because I didn't have a sitter. So when COVID hit and everything went online, it was perfect. And I requested to stay online, and they tried to move me off, and I said, look, y'all, I'm a single parent. If you move me off of this, I can't guarantee I'm gonna be able to come to therapy because I have a kid. Where's she supposed to go? Work schedules, people don't always have the ability to take time off or wanna tell people why they wanna take time off. So I say this, this is the most important thing I would say to you guys to tell your clients or even just you. Don't give up and don't stop seeking help, because all the things I listed are issues and barriers that are gonna be in the way of seeking help. But at the end of the day, you being alive is worth it. And us talking openly and honestly about people seeking mental health and not trying to sugarcoat it and make it sound like flowers and rainbows, because it's not. And really be honest and understand and meet your clients where they're at. If they don't have childcare and they don't have time to come in and meet, well, what can you do to try to help mitigate that without you taking it personally and without you feeling like they don't want to talk to me, they don't want to meet with me, they're not taking this seriously. So the book that I wrote, the things that I covered in here, I talk about PTSD, depression, anxiety, and postpartum depression. And the reason that I really wanted to put this out, and the reason that I love talking about it, is because I had no idea how hard it was going to be just for me to go say, hey, I'm feeling a little bit crazy. I need help. I'm a single parent. I'm super stressed. I want my meds to get regulated. I'm going to go in and I'm going to get help. And I was all excited and proud of myself, for doing that. And I went there and it was a complete disaster, guys. It was terrible, and it was the worst decision that I ever made. And I've had so many people tell me that they've had this exact situation where they tried to go put themselves in voluntarily, and then they were forced into an involuntary hold. And how traumatizing that can be, and how horrific that can be, and detrimental to your mental health journey. But I didn't know that it was so common. I didn't know how many people had tried to go put themselves in, on the 10th floor. I didn't know that, and it's something that I'm like, wow, there's a lot of us who are really struggling out here who really need help, and we're not getting the help that we need. And as a veteran, we're a different breed. I know that we can be a little bit difficult to work with, but we're willing and we're able, and a lot of times it's just hard. And there's a lot of barriers, and we're struggling. And sometimes you just need kindness, and you just need support. And that's, somebody asked me, what did I feel like was lacking in like the VA mental health system? And that was it. Another thing I'll say really quickly is that a lot of organizations think that the VA has more services than it does. It does not. If you are homeless right now, they can help you. If you are about to be evicted, they can. If you're struggling to pay your rent, they can. If you're struggling with childcare, they can. If you're struggling with food insecurities, they may give you numbers to a food pantry, but if you don't have a car or a way to go pick it up, those things. And it's, when I was really going through it, as I call it, going down the rabbit hole, I was reaching out for help. And the frustrating thing was, every agency that I called told me, did you call the VA? And some people got some choice words, because I was like, yes, I did. I'm sorry, I'm stupid. Oh my God, why wasn't that the first place that I would call, And I know that it was nice, and, but there's that misunderstanding that a lot of these local organizations have, that they think the VA is really gonna help you. And it's not that they're not, but there's no things in place kind of just for this. Even getting therapy and going to therapy. I have to drive to the VA if I wasn't able to be on video. Any doctor's appointment I have to drive out there. Now, they say they offer you a ride. I tried. I don't know if it's possible, but it did not happen for me. So if you're, so those are things that people, hey, you can call them and get transportation. Maybe, can you? No, I don't. And with the ongoing homelessness issue here, and with people, talking about the trash and encampments, it makes me sad, because I just think about how I could just be out there. I'm a regular person, I have a job, I have a daughter, I have a house, but if one thing happens, it could all just go away. And if I would have been placed in the involuntary, because they forced me to sign it, so I signed it. But if I would have been stuck there for like a week or 2 weeks, which I know I had a girlfriend, she was stuck there for 2 weeks. She lost her job. Then she couldn't pay for her car. You think she's more depressed now or less? These are just some references that I have for this, if you guys are interested. And thank you again for having me. And I hope that, I know you guys are all in your field, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I wasn't trying to give you a mental health lesson, but I really just wanted to broaden your horizons about kind of the issues that are facing women here in this area, Black women, veterans, that it's very hard, and that racism here is real, and it's prevalent in the hospitals. When you're trying to seek treatment, when you're just trying to get help, people assume that you're pain seeking, that you're malingering, and I've had those different things. I remember I went to one of the hospitals and they're like, well, why did you come here and not go to the VA? I said, because the EMT recommended it. Like, my bad, I'm sorry. Should I, like, you know, and she just had such an attitude about why did you come? And I was like, what kind of question is that? You know, are you asking Susie that question too when she comes in here? And so those are the things that are just so prevalent. When I talked to Chanel, like, that's really what I was thinking about, was what barriers am I facing and how can I help explain that to the other people who are kind of in my field and who are trying to really be out here and really help people and help them kind of understand. So thank you so much. Here's my contact information. I'm on social media. I do have some business cards. I'm not trying to sell you my book, but I do have books available for you guys, because I've never seen anything like that. And so it would have helped me, and that's why I did it. So thank you. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
I wanted to say thank you for the book. So often we hear we need more money, throw more money at the problem, especially in the area of mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes what makes the media are the end result of untreated mental health. So I thank you for your book, giving us that microcosm look, and I'm encouraging you to share that book with legislators who can maybe fund and have a closer, more intimate look at what mental health services really look like in reality.
Thank you, and I have been. That's
And
something.
thank you for your service work.
Thank
on
you.
this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I
Amber, for
just
your
wanted to
story.
make one quick comment. I mean, your experience it reaches all of us, and thank you for that. I just want to underscore what Cindy started the meeting with our mission in the Interagency Council. And when you were talking about barriers, I just want to remind everyone the power of numbers. You know, 100 people really doesn't help out if those 100 people aren't reaching one person that's in crisis. I do a lot of referrals, to the agencies, but this information in the agencies, you have to be able to share other resources, and refer people that these people can help. I know United Neighborhood Centers has, a continuum of care. So these are wraparound services, case managers. The Right Center uses case managers. So there's a lot of help to avoid people from running back and forth. So, I just want to say thank you, and I just want to underscore Cindy's, the importance of sharing what the Interagency Council mission is.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, we all have the same problem. People don't know we're here, that they can come here for help. A good example, you mentioned the people who don't have the technology to access a lot of these online things. They can come to the public library, we have computers, we have printers, and we have people to help. And we're all having the same issues where, there's a lot of biases, people are just hospital institution police. But I wish there was an easy answer to, we're all here to help. And I think this group.
Do you guys have free printing at the library?
Yeah, well, no, we have to, but it's nominal.
Because that was a barrier for me, not gonna lie. When I first got out the military and I was, single mom, I was getting divorced, I was right in school, and I had to print stuff. And I didn't even realize that was gonna be a barrier to my life, was not being able to afford to be able to
We
print.
cut a lot of breaks.
Even, I would add to that, even just a small thing as a quarter. Sometimes when you're in those situations, not even having to go to the library, you can pull up to somewhere where you have to pay for parking and you don't have the money in your car, you don't have a quarter, you now have a $35 ticket on your car, and you're even more depressed and stressed out. I'm sorry, I'm so long. You're even more in a worse situation mentally than you were before, so yeah.
I like your ending where you said, "Don't give up."
Thank you. I've had to tell myself that a lot, but I've had such amazing positive feedback. I was at the VA and I was sitting there telling some guy, he left his kids in the car. and I had my daughter with me, and because the VA was going through a whole thing with COVID and kids, and I was fighting, yelling at everybody, and you know, we were talking, and I was like, oh yeah, you know, I just wrote a book about how crappy the VA is, and he looked it up on Amazon, and he just read the excerpt that I had up there, and he just starts crying. You know, now I'm crying. Now my daughter's looking at us like, why are you crying? I'm like, still like, sorry, you should go get your kids out the car. But it just, in that moment, and he just opened up, I mean, right off the bat, and he just said, I went through this. He said, I was in the service, I was a Marine, and I went to the hospital to get help, and he said, I was treated like absolute dog crap. He was like, I was berated the whole way. I got home, called every name in the book, like, he said it was just such a bad situation. And I mean, the tears were right there. You know, this probably happened to him maybe 8-10 years ago. You know, he's out now, has a family and stuff, but it was just so real right there. And even him just struggling, just trying to go to the VA. Like, he was trying to get blood drawn, wasn't allowed to bring his kids in. I personally asked for forgiveness before permission. So I was like, well, she gotta come today. And, you know, but he could have been in trouble for that, because he was trying to seek help. So, thank you. And if you guys want a copy of my book or a card or anything, I have it.
Thank you so much. I'd like to motion to adjourn the meeting. Oh, picture. Oh, yes. Louise wants a picture. Okay. Maybe we throw one up over there against the wall. Maybe Amber will take a photo.
That thing's still recording.
Maybe leave some chairs in the front. Leave some chairs in the